Alrighty, so we are in week 3 already. The NFL season is flying by. For you today, I have my running back tiers and rankings going into week 3. And without further ado, we're going to hop right into those rankings and tiers. All right, so at RB number 1, I have Bijan Robinson going up against the Carolina Panthers this week. Their defense has not been able to stop anything through the air, on the ground, but it has been truly a run funnel so far through the first 2 weeks. Kind of what we saw last year out of the Panthers defense. You could run the ball on them. They gave up like a crazy amount of rush yards per week to pretty much anybody who wanted to run the football. Could have been some random dude, probably still would have ran for close to 100 yards in the Panthers last season, and it kind of looks like that's what we're going to see this year again. Bijan Robinson is going to probably have over 100 yards, God only knows how many touchdowns, and it's probably going to be a week where Michael Penix doesn't have to throw the ball, and Bijan just pops off in fantasy football. At number 2, I have Christian McCaffrey. The 49ers are going up against the Arizona Cardinals. Mac Jones is more than likely still going to play this week. He probably will look a little bit better passing the football than he did in week 2, but Christian McCaffrey is still going to have all the touches, all the catches. He's going to be overly involved, scoring probably a lot of the points for the 49ers as well. He's going to be the man, just like we saw in week 2 versus the Saints. My only concern so far, and I just want to note this to know that I said it out loud to people out there, so far Christian McCaffrey hasn't looked that effective on the ground. He really hasn't had a super high yardage week so far, so that is a little bit more concerning for me. And the reason why that matters is because if the Cardinals are smart, with Calais Campbell up front, the front four for the Cardinals, they really could stop and, stymie the run in week 3. If that happens, he may not be obviously as effective on the ground, kind of like what we've already seen, but it'll really come down to how much his usage is and how explosive he looks through the pass with Mac Jones. But still have him comfortably at number 2. At number 3, the highest I've had him so far this season, it is Jonathan Taylor. He is going to end up being in a smash spot against the Titans. It's not going to be a super high scoring game. I want to say the Titans are ranked 30th in points scored per game, around like 14.5. I do anticipate that the Colts are going to be able to score quite a few points through the air, especially against this Titans team. If that ends up being what we see, there's a good chance that Jonathan Taylor is able to salt this game away in the 3rd and 4th quarter, and they're going to run the ball quite a bit. At number 4, and this is the highest I've had him as well so far, it is James Cook. So far, James Cook has been like the RB1, I feel like, through the first 2 weeks. I don't know if that's exactly statistically correct. He's going to be going into a smash game. The Dolphins defense has looked absolutely terrible this season. They've given up a lot of ground yards. They've given up a lot of pass yards. He's going to be involved in both facets of the game. He has touchdown equity on this team, like crazy touchdown equity on this team. He's going to be in a smash spot. He's going to easily finish as a top 5 running back on this week. Even if the game gets out of hand, they're still going to be like, hey, James, you can still run the football because we're up by 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns. So if that's what we end up seeing, he's going to smash no matter which way this game goes, high scoring, low scoring. He's going to be overly involved and beat up on this Miami Dolphins defense and smash in week 3. Saquon Barkley. The Eagles are going up against the Rams. I think this game is going to be higher scoring than people are anticipating currently. This game will probably end up being one of his better games on the season just because of how involved he's going to have to be on the ground, through the air, scoring points. This could end up being like a crazy shootout, especially if these defenses can't contain the explosive Rams offense and what could be an explosive Eagles offense through the air as well. At number 6, I have Jahmyr Gibbs. The Lions are going up against the Ravens this week. The Ravens have not really let you run the football effectively against them, but they haven't played against an offensive line or a running back quite as good as the Lions offensive line and Jahmyr Gibbs / David Montgomery. It's going to be a super high scoring game. The Ravens are going to score. That's going to happen no matter what. It is going to set up the Lions where they could end up being a little behind, and that does make it where Gibbs is more involved in the passing game. Either way, he's going to get there, whether it's on the ground, through the air, smash game, lots of points. Would be surprised if we see him score maybe 2 touchdowns this week. He realistically could finish as the number 1 running back this week, but I have him comfortably at number 6 on the week. So at number 7, on the flip side of that matchup, I do have Derrick Henry. Should be a super high scoring game. If there's a reality where the Lions get out ahead and kind of keep a lead, it could kind of diminish Derrick Henry's role in those games. He's not really quite as involved because Lamar is having to pass the football so much and be Superman. But if this game is close and just super high scoring, he is going to absolutely pop off just like Jahmyr Gibbs. He could finish as the RB1 on the week. It is a possibility. The other thing to keep in mind, he didn't look that explosive or good against the Browns in week 2. So I do think he's going to bounce back in week 3 and pop off, a little bit of a chip on his shoulder for this week. At RB8, I have Devon Achane. If the Bills-Dolphins game ends up being a blowout, he's going to be involved in the passing game. He's going to get a ridiculous amount of targets that is going to keep him viable as an RB1 every single week in fantasy football. If the game is close, he'll be able to run the football, catch the football, and be involved in both facets of the game. And even if the Dolphins get blown out, can't score any points, he's still going to be overly involved through the air, and he is elite in open space. So I think Devon Achane is safely going to be an RB1 and a first-tier feeling great guy in week 3. So at RB9, I have Bucky Irving. I've actually kind of like thought about these categories this week. So for this one, it's feeling great, but if Justin Fields doesn't play, this should be a really low scoring game for the Jets, which means the Bucs won't have to score quite as many points. So he should be overly involved. His usage should be very, very high like it has been in week 1 and week 2. Their run defense and overall defense hasn't looked like that explosive so far on the season. We just saw James Cook pop off on them in week 2 and have like 160 yards or whatever it was, something crazy like that, right? I'm not saying Bucky's going to do exactly that, but he should be looking pretty good in week 3. The reason why I have a but for this game for Bucky is only because if Justin Fields doesn't play, how many points do the Bucs actually have to score? So he might not end up with a touchdown this week, only because it might not be that high of a scoring game. At RB10, and I have him a little bit higher than what you'll probably see in consensus out there, it is Kyren Williams. I am thinking back to last year's playoff game against the Eagles where he absolutely popped off. I think that's what you're going to end up seeing. I think he's going to look dominant in this game. I think Sean McVay is going to be dialing it up for everybody on this team. This offense for the Rams is going to come out, try and punch Philadelphia in the mouth early. Kyren is going to be involved in the ground, through the air. He's going to be a pretty smash play this week. Anybody involved in this game, I just think you're going to end up seeing just like haymakers being thrown. So I have him comfortably as an RB1 this week in week 3. At RB11, it's the highest I've had him so far, but here we are. Can't do anything about it. The man has a lot of touchdown equity and hasn't looked absolutely terrible through the first 2 weeks. That is none other than Javonte Williams. The Cowboys are playing against the Bears this week. It has some of the highest implied scoring totals on the week for any football game. Both of these defenses don't look very good. There's some key injuries for the Bears in their secondary, so Dak should be able to pass the ball pretty effectively as well. So for me, I feel confident putting him as an RB1 because of the scoring totals for this game and how out of hand it could get. He's going to be involved through the air. He had quite a few targets in week 1 and in week 2, so he's going to be involved on the ground through the air, and there should be a lot of points scored, so he is probably in store for a touchdown this week as well. At RB12, this is the highest I've had him as well, and I remember in it was week 1 or week 2, I said, there's coming a week where I am going to swap Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason, because it's Jordan Mason at RB12. I'm going to swap Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. They are going to swap on this board, and I can't wait for that day. I'm sad that it came from an injury and not Kevin O'Connell being like, this guy looks really good. Probably should be our first second down and goal line back. My biggest concern, and probably the biggest positive as well, so it's kind of a weird like duality that's going on, is that JJ McCarthy's not going to play. It should set it up where Jordan Mason is going to be a big focal point for the Vikings. They are going up against Cincinnati Bengals this week, whose defense is not historic by any means. So the first 2 weeks, they're allowing 83 yards on the ground, averaged between running backs on the opposing side of the football. He should be in store for a touchdown if they get on the goal line because there is no other power back or really good running back on this team at this point in time. This is kind of a prove it week for Jordan Mason. If he pops off this week, I think he locks in as the RB1 for the Vikings going forward, especially with the Aaron Jones injury and being on IR for the next 4 weeks. So at RB13 is Kenneth Walker. He's going up against the Saints this week. I'm not sure how the split's going to look between him and Zach Charbonnet. It does look like Charbonnet hasn't been practicing this week, so if he does not end up playing in this game, it's not going to just be a feeling great but. It's a feeling great, straight up, standalone by itself. The Saints' run defense has not looked that great through the first 2 weeks on tape. Statistically, they're doing okay, but I think Kenneth Walker is in a smash spot to explode in this game, run for quite a few yards, and kind of like I already said, if Zach Charbonnet is not playing, he's going to end up being in a spot where he is the workhorse back for this entire football game, which we have not seen out of him since last season. At RB14, and this is the lowest I've had him so far this season, and probably a lot lower than what you'll see out there, it is Josh Jacobs. So far through 2 weeks, the Browns front four is not letting you run the football effectively against them. The Browns defense in general is not letting you run the football against them. They have to know that Josh Jacobs is a focal point for this offense. They got to know that Jaden Reed is down. Tucker Kraft is kind of hobbled. He may not end up playing. If that is the case, it would not surprise me if they're like, hey, we're going to make you beat us with your okay wide receivers, but we're not going to let Josh Jacobs get it going. He could end up finishing dramatically lower than this, but I wanted to safely put him here as an RB2. all of these guys again so far you are starting regardless of the matchups, just because they're people you drafted to start in fantasy football in your running back position. At RB15, again, a little bit higher than people probably have him out there, it is Chase Brown. The Bengals are going up against the Vikings. I already kind of talked about the matchup from the Vikings point of view. For the Bengals side, Jake Browning is going to end up starting this week. It is going to set it up where I don't know how the pass game is really going to look. Hopefully Jake Browning can step up, kind of step into the shoes, even if miniaturely so, of Joe Burrow in week 3 and get the passing game going. I'm also hoping, because he is not Joe Burrow, he is check down princessing to Chase Brown, which makes it where Chase Brown is still a viable guy in fantasy football in week 3. I probably could have him dramatically lower and feel comfortable about that too, but I just have to have faith that Jake Browning is going to check down the ball. The Vikings defense is kind of beat up right now. It's not going to be a super high scoring game, so hopefully they're able to run the ball if it's not a high scoring game in the 3rd and 4th quarters, which means I have Chase Brown here in kind of a spot, but I don't want to bump him too much lower. People don't start him and then he pops off and has a, 18-point game and you're like, why didn't you tell me to start him? At RB16, I have Travis Etienne. Man looks good. Don't know if we've really seen a true return to form or if this is just more of Liam Cohen getting this offense humming and rolling effectively through the first 2 weeks. He is facing a Houston Texans defense who's not really letting you run the ball too great historically. Week 2, it obviously didn't look like that between Rachaad White, the old man, coming in and popping off. Really not an old man, but in my mind, he's an old man. Buck Irving looking pretty well as well. The game is probably not going to be very high scoring. They should be able to effectively run the football in the second half. Etienne has touchdown equity on this team. He still has some juice, especially in the beginning of the season, with no injuries on the table currently for him right now. So I have him comfortably as a high-end RB2 going into week 3. At RB17, I do have Chuba Hubbard. It's going to be a very low-scoring game. He should be able to be okay in week 3. The biggest concern I have for Chuba is he hasn't looked that effective on the ground so far. He is getting there through touchdowns because he does have a lot of touchdown equity on this team with Bryce Young throwing him the football. It has been through the air in both weeks. I do have him lower than I've had him so far because the matchup against the Falcons front 4 is not that great. At RB18, and I know I have him higher than a lot of people out there, is DeAndre Swift. He hasn't looked that great on the ground for the first 2 weeks. I think Ben Johnson does not want to go 0-3. I know that the implied scoring totals for the Bears and the Cowboys in week 3 is absolutely smashing. They are both going to end up scoring a lot of points in this game. DeAndre Swift should be able to get there on the ground decently, and he should be involved in the passing game to some extent as well. He's not somebody that I feel like super great about on the season so far, but he is involved with Ben Johnson. He is attached to an offense who should score a lot of points in week 3, so I do have him comfortably-ish inside of an RB2 range for this coming week. At RB19, I have Alvin Kamara. This is the lowest I've had him on the season as well. My biggest concerns this week is that it's not going to be a super high scoring game. He hasn't looked horrible on the ground, but he hasn't looked as explosive as last season as far as I'm concerned. That could be the coordinator change, so the run game's not popping as much as it was last year. And also he has Spencer Rattler from the football, so they're able to kind of like stack the boxes a little bit more because obviously the defenses know he's a focal point of this team with a not rookie but kind of a rookie quarterback playing for the Saints. My other big concern for this matchup for him is the front 4 of the Seahawks is kind of disgusting so far on the season. They really could bottle him up on the ground, which means that he may have to get the majority of his work done through the air. I have him a little bit lower in my rankings for week 3. He's still somebody you should feel comfortable starting this week. Ashton Jeanty. I don't like the comments that he made in the press conference about his usage and where he was drafted. Not my favorite thing. The reason why I have him here is in week 2 against the Chargers, he showed more flashes than what we saw in week 1. I'm hoping going up against this Commanders run defense that hasn't been anything too extravagant through the first 2 weeks, he should be in a spot where he should look pretty good. It's not going to be that high scoring of a game if Jaden Daniels doesn't play, so that does set it up where in the 3rd and 4th quarter in the second half, he should be able to run the ball still and they shouldn't have to be in passing situations. It is also going to be one of those things where this could be the week, it really could, where Ashton Jeanty pops off, breaks out a little bit more than we've seen so far through the first 2 weeks. I do not want to tell you not to start him because if he has a good week against this Commanders defense that hasn't been too crazy, it is a lower scoring game. He has maybe some touchdown equity this week as well. I just don't want to tell you not to start him. He ends up having a good week, and then you're like, dang it, I didn't start Ashton Jeanty in the week where he finally popped off. At RB21, I do have Tony Pollard. So far on the season, Tony Pollard has looked decent enough on the ground. Cam Ward still hasn't got it figured out. He's not really getting the targets, like the check down targets, that is, from Cam Ward. Hopefully this offense can kind of realize like, hey, he's another pass catcher who is viable enough in the flat. So hopefully they get him the ball a little bit more in week 3. I have him as a bottom of the barrel-ish RB2 in week 3. At RB22, I have James Conner. James Conner has not really looked like all that great for the first 2 weeks. I don't know if this is just teams saying like, hey, Kyler Murray, we dare you to throw the football. And it really could be that, because historically for the past couple of seasons, Kyler Murray has not been that great passing the football. He may be more of a fringe RB2 versus a locked-in RB2 going forward. We'll have to kind of wait and see what it looks like and what his usage is on the ground, through the air in week 3. At RB23, I do have Breece Hall. I have Breece Hall a lot lower this week. It's not because of last week. It is because of the fact that Justin Fields is probably not going to play. It's also because the Bucs are like, what, a top 5 or top 10 run defense right now through 2 weeks. They are not letting you run the football effectively against them. It is hard to take Breece Hall out of like a starting RB for people in week 3. Only because we saw what he looked like in week 1 against the Pittsburgh defense that couldn't stop the run in week 1 or week 2. So that may have just been an anomaly and could just be what we see out of Pittsburgh for the rest of the season. Breece Hall is going to have to be a focal point though, because if Tyrod Taylor starting versus Justin Fields, they are going to have to establish the run. At RB24, and you can love me or hate me for putting him here, but it is Rhamondre Stevenson. This is a little bit of an overreaction from week 2, but it is also a little bit of like trying to think about what could actually happen in week 3. Patriots are going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 3. So far, the Steelers cannot stop people from running the football on them. We have seen it 2 weeks in a row. They just cannot stop anybody. It is going to set it up where it's going to be a lower scoring game, because you're not going to see a lot of points scored from either one of these teams in this week. They're not projected to score a lot of points. It does also mean that TreVeyon Henderson, not because he's not good, not because he's not explosive, but because Rhamondre gets it going on the ground early, may not be quite as involved. If you want to wish cast that TreVeyon Henderson is going to be the lead back this week and he's going to pop off because he's going to get the early carries against a Pittsburgh run defense that can't stop the run, then you could put TreVeyon Henderson right here as a fringe end of the road RB2 for you in week 3. At RB25, I have David Montgomery. I've already talked about the matchup between the Lions and the Ravens in week 3. Should be a high scoring game. David has some level of touchdown equity on this team. If there's some goal line carries to be had, he probably will get a handful of them and he's probably going to score a touchdown. Not somebody that I'm going to feel super great about starting, but if I don't have any other choice, I'd rather take the guy in a matchup that's going to be probably fireworks, and take the guy who has a chance to score a touchdown for week 3 as a fill-in for one of my other running backs who I have higher up in my rankings. At RB26, I have J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins, R.J. Harvey, I really don't think it matters this week. I do not think the Chargers are going to let you run the football against them. Their defense is going to be pretty stout. I know that Khalil Mack is going on IR, I believe, so he's not going to be out there, so maybe they let you run the football a little bit easier against them. It is still going to be a defensive matchup by my estimation, so I don't feel confident starting J.K. Dobbins, but I do have him a little bit higher than other people that are coming after him. So if you're in a tough spot, you can start J.K. Dobbins. He is going to be the lead running back for this team until he ends up getting injured or just kind of loses a little bit of the juice. And that's the point in time where R.J. Harvey will probably emerge and take over the lead running back position on this football team. On the flip side of that same matchup, I have Omarion Hampton. He hasn't looked too good, but he hasn't looked horrible through the first couple of weeks. My biggest concern is going up against the Broncos defense. I think Sean Payton will have this defense figured out a little bit more in week 3. So Omarion Hampton is somebody I have outside of my starting RBs for you in week 3. But again, with these first handful of guys, if you need somebody to fill in for you in a tight spot, Omarion Hampton is not a bad option. So at RB28, I have Quinshon Judkins. He had a little bit of juice in week 2. So we'll see what it looks like in week 3 for him. He is going up against the Packers defense that so far has been absolutely explosive. The Browns don't really seem like they can get a push up front from their offensive line. So I don't know how great the running game is going to be on the season. But like I kind of already said, for everybody else so far at this like not an RB2 range, if you have to fill and plug and play, he's not a horrible option. And maybe, just maybe, catch the Packers off guard because they're not really sure what they're going to see out of him and how they're going to scheme him up with Kevin Stefanski and the Browns. Alrighty, so there are my running back tiers and rankings for week 3. Hopefully this video helps you get just a little bit closer to winning your fantasy football championship in 2025. If you're looking for some QB and tight end rankings for week 3, I'll have that video down here below. I think it looks pretty good for week 3. Feel a little bit more confident than I did in week 2 or week 1. So hopefully it ends up being pretty good for you guys in week 3 for both these RB rankings and QB/tight end rankings. Hopefully I'll see you guys again. No, hopefully you guys will see me again real soon. And until then, y'all have a blessed day. Bye.